Hi everyone, my name is Eva. I'm a holistic health consultant. I finished a workout a while ago, just a bit ago, and I'm outside here at a park close to where I live, in the city I live in. And as you can see, I'm outdoors. It's beautiful out. It's raining. I made it to this section of the park, luckily, while it wasn't raining and it just started pouring, so that's what you can hear in the background. And so today I wanted to bring to you another story from the Bible that has to do with love, and I want to continue to bring that to you so that you can continue to keep faith in God. And I think that's something, the message that I want to bring to you, or one of the messages, is that we want to continue to have faith in God daily, so that when hard times come, we have faith in God that He'll be able to get us through hard times. And I think it's important to start the day with a small prayer. If you could take 30 seconds when you first wake up, I think it's healthy. Every night I sleep with a rosary in my hand, just so that I feel better. I've felt so much better doing that. For the last 6 months, I haven't had a terrible dream or anything of that sort. So I do recommend that if you wanted to start that as a practice. Reciting the rosary, I do recommend that. And if you have a relative, or if you can find someone to do it with, it feels really good. Peace comes over you, and you're just able to get through your day and get through things much easier, because you're sure that God is protecting you and making it easier for you to get through things, and to keep focus on the task at hand. And every time you tend to get distracted, you can tell yourself that that's not something of God, and He wants you to continue to finish what you're working on. So the story that I have for you today comes from the book of Genesis. But before that, I wanted to read you just a small section of this book that I've shared with you in the past. It's called the Illustrated Bible Story by Story. It's a really nice book that I purchased in Wellesley, in a bookstore in Wellesley. I really love that bookstore. They've really handpicked really nice books that makes it easier for one to consume the information. I've seen books where with like the book of the Odyssey, and so they handpick books for their clients in particular that walk in there, I've noticed. So if you have a chance, I'd take a drive down there and check out the bookstore. It's, I believe, on I don't want to give you misinformation, so I'll just share it in the description box below. So I'll read you the foreword of this, so that it gives you more context on the Bible and the kinds of stories that are in the Bible and what it's made up of. It's made up of different books in general. But let me just read this brief foreword of this book. The Bible is the most famous book in the world. The very name comes from Biblos, the Greek word for book, composed over a period of more than 1,000 years. No other work of literature has had such impact on human history, or such a lasting hold on our imagination. For many, the Bible is far more than a collection of the greatest stories ever told. More than a third of the world's population believe the Bible is the Word of God. At the heart of human lives for much of history and across many parts of the world, the Bible has also inspired magnificent works of art and sublime music. The sumptuously illustrated manuscripts of medieval monasteries were invariably texts from the Bible. The glorious fresco cycle by Michelangelo in the Vatican's Sistine Chapel in Rome is a spectacularly visual version of the Bible from the creation of the world to the Last Judgment. Composers have drawn from the Bible for, this is a hard word to pronounce, oratorios, passions, masses, operas, and operas, and spirituals. Even our everyday language is peppered with expression that come from the Bible. In the 15th century, the Bible became one of the very first books ever printed, and in the whole or in part. It has now been translated into more than 3,600 languages. Over 2 millennia believe that the Bible's message has impelled hundreds of thousands of Christians to travel to far lands to spread their faith. The main message of the Bible is about the love which God and his people have for each other. So that's the message. As such, it has inspired countless generations, and it has. Yet for many, but the Bible in its traditional form remains a closed book. In the illustrated Bible, story by story, our aim has been to bring to life its extraordinary stories, characters, and teachings for the widest possible readership. We consulted with a team of experts, scholars, and writers from a variety of dominations and disciplines. We wrote for people from many differing faith backgrounds or none, for those already familiar with the Bible and for those who know little of it. We sought out the most beautiful and informative illustrations, from maps to old masters, historical artifacts to photographs of the Bible lands today. This is, we hope, a book for everyone and for all time. And this is the editor-in-chief, Michael Collins. And this is the image of scenes from Genesis, Michelangelo fresco on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Vatican, Rome, was painted between 1508 to 1512. It depicts the creation of man and the expulsion of Adam and Eve from Eden. This is what it shows. That's apparently the ceiling on the Vatican. Right there. Okay, so now I'll read to you kind of an introductory version of the story that I'll get into. It's called the Patriarch section, and it comes from Genesis. I'm just gonna switch sides right now. Genesis 1 through 11 is the biblical account of how everything was created, what went wrong, and a description of the table of nations. Genesis 10, Genesis 12 begins the story of God's plan to make things right again. That's important. A plan that involved building up a family through which everyone on earth would be blessed. And I think that's what God's hope is, to bless everyone. The start of this story is set in late 3rd millennium BC, when great civilizations had emerged along the banks of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in Mesopotamia and the Nile in Egypt. Yet it was not through mighty nations that God unfolded his plan, but through a nomadic, childless couple. That is Abraham and Sarah that he's talking about, the childless couple that he later was able to bless them with children. I know that they had, I believe it was Ismail and Isaac. And sorry, I take a little bit of time because I sometimes know terminology in Spanish and I have to translate in my mind, but my first reaction or default is English, and so that's why I sometimes have to take a moment to pause in my brain. The story begins with 3 heads of the family known as the patriarchs, father rulers. The family founding father was Abraham, originally from Chaldea in Mesopotamia, who was this descendant of one of Noah's sons, Shem, and had been raised as non-religious. Abraham's family. God revealed himself to Abraham as or Abram, as he was called, and commanded him to go to the land of Canaan. God pledged that Abraham's people would possess this place, and they would become a great nation. Abraham went to Canaan, traveling through it as a pastoral nomad and erecting altars to God each time he pitched his tent. Having followed God's instruction obediently, it was in Canaan that the childless, now elderly Abraham started a family. The firstborn was Ismail, so I was right, it was Ismail, from whom the Arab nations descended, and then came Isaac, the son of God had promised would be born to Abraham's wife Sarah. Isaac, the second patriarch, had 2 sons, Esau and Jacob. The nature of God. This section of Genesis tells us many things about the nature and the purposes of Israel's God. He is a God who has a plan to save the world, who wants a relationship with people, who makes a covenant or binding contract with those who trust him, and who takes the bad things of life and works them into good. As this family grew in number, so also grew in its understanding of God. So this actually makes sense to me, and where it explains here, he makes a covenant or binding contract for those who trust him. So you have to have trust and faith in God, and who takes the bad things of life, and unfortunately bad things do happen in life, and works them into good. So he does take the bad and works them to be an outcome of good, and you have to stay positive and trust that only he knows why he does the things he does. And so this section is called A Wife for Isaac. So you can see here there's the servant, and then what you'll learn to be later is Rebeka at a well. That's the imagery that they show in the book, which is beautiful. Abraham sent a servant to find a wife for his son Isaac. And I believe it's because Abraham understands that he's getting old, and he knows that Isaac needs a wife. And so he sends a servant out to find a wife for Isaac. And I'll just sum it up because I was able to read it in the Bible where Abraham speaks with the servant and asks him to go out and find this woman. Her name is Rebeka. And the way that the servant knows that it is she that he needs to bring back to Isaac is where he prays to God, and he says that if she is kind enough to serve him water from the well and serve his camels water, then it is she that he would bring back to Isaac, which in fact is Rebeka. And I'll just quickly sum it, and I'll read it to you in English from this story and in Spanish actually, where the servant actually goes back to Rebeka's family, provides them a gift for taking her as a wife for Isaac. And so that's really basically what he does. But what's more fascinating about the story is that back then, that's usually how you would get married. It was something that was arranged, and willingly, I believe they would, fall in love and, have a family. But what's interesting is that, they would go on to create many more generations. This is the reason why I'm reading this to you. So the section again is called A Wife for Isaac. Abraham sent a servant to find a wife for his son Isaac. In a classic romance story, the servant was led to beautiful Rebeka, who gladly returned home with him to marry Isaac. As the years passed, Abraham grew older. He became acutely aware of the need to find Isaac a wife. He therefore called his chief servant and made him swear an oath that he would not look among the Canaanites, but would go to Abraham's homeland and find a woman there among them. The servant asked what to do if the woman would not come back with him. Could he take Isaac there? And here I'll just cut this short, where Abraham says absolutely not. Isaac is staying here, and you need to go out and find his wife. It is evening, the time when women drew water from the well. So he prayed, asking God for the following sign. And he said to a woman, "Please give me a drink." And she replied, "Drink while I give some water to your camels." 2. Then he would know that this was one God that. Then he would know that this was the one that God had chosen. Sorry, I'm having difficulty reading to you this right now because it's a little chilly here. it is about 65 degrees or maybe a little chillier. Yeah, so that's why it's a bit of a challenge. The prayer is answered. Before the servant had finished praying, a young woman named Rebeka appeared, and he asked her for some water. She offered him a drink from a jar she had just filled from the well, and also returned to the well to bring water to his camels. The servant gave her gifts and asked who her father was, whether there was room in his father's house for him to spend the night. When she replied, he realized that God had led him to part of Abraham's land. Let's see. I'm going to cut to the chase and read the last paragraph here. Isaac was sitting out in the fields. So the servant goes back to Rebeka's family's home. He gives them a gift and then brings her back. And on the way back, Isaac was sitting out in the fields praying when he looked up and saw camels approaching. When Rebeka saw him, she got down from her camel and asked the servant who he was. When she heard it was Isaac, she put on her veil to indicate that she was his bride, and the servant told Isaac all that had happened. So Isaac took her into the tent of his mother. Sarah, who had died before Abraham, had dispatched his servant as a sign not only that he was marrying her, but also that she was taking his mother's place as matriarch of the family. And so it was that he married Rebeka. So that's the story. And I'll read to you in Spanish now because I really love the sound of it. I think it's important to hear it. It shouldn't be too long. Let's see. The servant's name is actually Eliezer. Eliezer busca una esposa para Isaac. Eliezer looks for a wife for Isaac. That's the translation. And I'll just read to you briefly the first section and then the very end because I think you get the gist of it. And this is Genesis chapter 24, verse 1 through 67, if you wanted to read it yourself. It doesn't matter if the Bible is in English or in Spanish. You should be able to find it in the same section. Okay, so Abraham era ya un anciano, muy avanzado en edad, y Yahvé they called God in those times. En esos tiempos llamaban a Dios Yahvé. Deletreado Y-A-V-E, spelled Y-A-V-E. Yahvé le había favorizado en todo. Abraham dijo a su servidor más antiguo, que era su mayordomo: pon tu mano bajo mi muslo y júrame por Yahvé, Dios del cielo y de la tierra, que no tomarás para mí una mujer de raza cananea, pues vivo en medio de estos, sino que irás a mi país y buscar entre mi parental. Una mujer para mi hijo Isaac. Again, voy a ir a leer casi al final. Lo que sucedió es que Abraham le preguntó a su sirviente que fuera a buscar una esposa para Isaac. Y el sirviente se encargó en encontrarle una esposa a Isaac, el hijo de Abraham, para seguir las generaciones, para que las generaciones siguieran. Entonces el mayordomo oró así, Yahvé. I'm going to read the section to you where he's praying to God in Spanish. Voy a leerles la sección donde el sirviente le reza a Dios para encontrar a la esposa de Isaac. Entonces el mayordomo oró así, Yahvé, Dios de mi patrón Abraham, haz que me vaya bien hoy y muestra la benevolencia para con mi patrón Abraham. Voy a quedarme junto a la fuente mientras las muchachas de la ciudad vienen a buscar agua, y una de ellas le voy a decir, por favor, inclina tu cántaro para que yo pueda tomar agua. Si ella me responde, toma y daré también de beber a tus camellos. Haz que sea ella la que tú has destinado para tu servidor Isaac. Esta será para mí la señal. This for me will be the sign que has I'm stuck on this word. Escuchado a mi patrón. No había terminado de orar cuando salió Rebeka con su cántaro al hombre. Era la hija de Batul. La joven era muy bella y aún virgen, pues no había tenido contacto con ningún hombre. Bajo la fuente llenó el cántaro y subió. Again, I'm gonna skip to the end. Voy a leer la última sección. Lo que sucedió después es que el sirviente se fijó que Rebeka era la mujer que iba a llevarle a Isaac. Fue a la casa de los papás, le ofreció unos regalos a los papás y se la llevó de regreso a Isaac. Y aquí es cuando Isaac reconoce que es ella. Isaac acaba de volver del pozo de la Yei. Roí. It's just solo es un lugar. It's just a place. Pues estaba viniendo en el Negub. Sorry, this book and the way that this book is written is antiquated. It's not a straight shot in Spanish, and that's why I'm struggling a little bit with the language, because the language that it's written in it's in an antiquated language, the way that they spoke it in the olden times. Al atardecer, como salía a dar un paseo por el campo, vio que se acercaban unos camellos. También Rebeka divisó a Isaac y al verlo y bajó del camello, preguntó al mayordomo: ¿quién es aquel hombre que viene por el campo a nuestro encuentro? Le respondió: es mi patrón. Ella entonces tomó su velo y se cubrió el rostro. El mayordomo contó a Isaac todo lo que había hecho. Isaac llevó a Rebeka a la tienda que había sido de su madre Sara. La hizo suya y fue su esposa. La amó y así se consoló por la muerte de su madre. Entonces ese es el fin de la Biblia, de esa historia. And so I thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. I hope that it brings you faith in anything that you're hoping for and praying for right now. And I also will do a prayer, to make sure that the people listening to this can have faith, more faith in God. And I think that's the whole purpose of this, is for God to live in people's hearts. And that's the reason I'm doing this, for everyone, for myself, and for God, to bring peace to our hearts and just to be a little bit kinder with each other. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.